Good evening from the news team here at CNN Money Switzerland. I'm Hannah Wise with your latest news headlines, and we'll start with the very latest from the Federal Council's press conference this Friday afternoon, where the State Secretariat for Economic Affairs admitted that it's made a, quote, terrible mistake by underestimating the economic impacts of the coronavirus crisis. Boris ZÜRCHER from the Labour Authority said neither could we foresee the current economic forecast nor the sharp rise in applications for short-time work. More than 1.85 million people have applied for short-time work. That's a third of the Swiss workforce. 917,000 cases have been granted so far, costing 525 million Swiss francs. Also in the press conference, it was revealed that to date, 22.6 million protective masks have been distributed to the various cantons in Switzerland, with another 90 million arriving by the end of this month. People will be able to buy them from next week. Daniel Koch from the Public Health Authority also said that antibody tests were not yet reliable and that only 5 to 10% of the population has had the virus. Meanwhile, scientists here in Switzerland have launched a nationwide study to determine the population's level of immunity. The programme, called IMMUNITAS, is being led by the Swiss School of Public Health, a consortium of scientists from 12 universities. It will invite 25,000 people to take part in the antibody blood tests and run for 6 months. So far, more than 28,500 people have been tested positive for the disease in Switzerland. That's according to public health officials. More than 1,300 have died. Now, aviation services company SWISSPORT has fired 10,000 staff at locations worldwide since the corona outbreak first began. A spokesperson confirmed that to CNN Money Switzerland today. Olivia Chang has the story.
The coronavirus pandemic has taken its toll on airports as well as airlines, but it's also impacting everything else on the ground. So we're talking about aircraft maintenance, baggage handling, as well as check-in services. Now this has had a huge effect on a company like SWISSPORT, which does all of these things during this whole crisis. They have had to axe some 10,000 jobs. Just to put that into perspective, they employ about 65,000 people worldwide. Now, a large chunk of these layoffs, or over half, are coming from the US and Canada, and more than 30% are from the EMEA region, so that's Europe, Middle East, as well as Africa. Now, here in Switzerland, the situation looks to be a little more optimistic. They have said to us that the layoffs here are still very low in the 2-digit range, and that's because they've been able to tap into the help from the Swiss government with the short-time work program, which has partially helped with covering the salaries. But clearly the company has had to strip down a lot of its operations, and the next few months will prove to be a crucial time for them. The only bright spot in all of this is that they've seen a pickup in business from some airports that deal mainly with cargo aircrafts. So that's Basel in Switzerland as well as Liège in Belgium. So there's a silver lining, if you will. Olivia Chang, Zurich.
Swiss pension levels are now back to what they were at the end of 2018. A report by Swiss Canto today says that due to extraordinary investment losses in the wake of the coronavirus crisis, reserves decreased by around 10% in the first quarter of 2020. And Apple Pay is finally coming to UBS, Switzerland's largest bank, after it refused to adopt it for years. In an attempt to boost Swiss mobile service Twint, they allegedly blocked Apple Pay adoption with their credit cards. The move will open Apple's mobile service up to the majority of Swiss banking customers. Well, it's now time for a behind-the-scenes look at a UK hospital. CNN's Nick Paton Walsh spent 48 hours with doctors helping to fight coronavirus in the United Kingdom, where, despite the lockdown, many people are still dying every day.
When, if ever, does it end? This vast hospital is in the UK's second worst hotspot, the Midlands, and has no easy answers. So while London mends, here the living and the dying keep coming, and they fear the second wave may be near. We look to numbers for comfort, but in this ICU, the odds are about even with COVID, doctors say. During the 24 hours we were here, 2 patients died and 2 got out of ICU. As the virus rages through our ordinary world outside, in here, its power is in the quiet it imposes.
Standing here, you not only see the ferocity of this disease, but the silence with which it kills, and also the helplessness of the people suffering.
One doctor wore a body cam during the life-saving procedure of proning, turning a patient on their front to ease breathing.
We don't 100% understand why it works. Essentially what it does is it changes the distribution of air within the chest, but also changes the way the blood is distributed within the chest.
Doing really well. You keep going, yeah? You're gonna have some ice cream when that tube comes out.
If people pass away, it's more often because we've come to the conclusion that they're not going to survive whatever we do, rather than them dying suddenly.
The hardest for staff, that isolation means patients die here without their family nearby. Masked doctors and nurses are the last people they see alive.
I've held a telephone to the ear of a gentleman who was dying so that his wife could speak to him. He was sedated, but we would always assume someone can hear you. The nurse that's looking after the patient will sit and hold their hand as they pass away as well. So they're always with someone. When my colleagues confessed that they were scared, I confessed, I said I'm scared too. Now this has gone on, I think the best we can do is wear the PPE, keep our fingers crossed that we don't get it. So am I scared? No. I'm not scared like I was when I started.
There's been really difficult shifts wherein I just cried in the shower. I cry at night. Oh, I'm gonna cry again. No, it's just very, I'm scared. I'm just scared, and I'm just basically like, oh, when am I gonna catch this? Because, we're dealing with patients who are infected. Despite having all the PPEs, you still don't know, isn't it? Even if you go by the book, there are people who still get infected. So it's just really, I'm just so scared.
This is not over, and it's not even clear if this is the beginning of the end or a lull before another wave.
We need to continue with the lockdown that we have to stop it spreading, and so for the next 6 weeks we're on standby. For another wave, yeah.
Still, the sick come, worsening and improving. Jacqueline, who delayed coming to hospital because she feared catching there the virus she already had, is improving.
They called the ambulance 3 times and I kept refusing to come in. I was scared to come in. Oh my goodness, it's so tight. You've got somebody sitting on your chest and you're trying to breathe and you're not getting anywhere. It's really frightening.
This hospital has had over 170 patients die from COVID. It now has about 170 who have it or possibly have it. A toll, leaving them both ready and cautious about a second wave. In a pandemic so riddled with unknowns, it leaves us certain only of how much we need each other. Nick Paton Walsh, CNN, Coventry, the United Kingdom.
Well, as we've reported here on CNN Money Switzerland, the nation is to release a contact tracing app on May the 11th to help detect the chain of corona-infected people. We spoke to the company behind the app, who is working alongside ETH and EPFL earlier on the programme. You can find that interview online on cnnmoney.ch. But now we spoke to the National Advisory Commission on Biomedical Ethics for their thoughts.
Fundamentally, there is no obstacle to the use of digital contact tracing per se, but it must be subject to really strict conditions. And I think it's about these conditions that we have to talk. The first one is absolutely crucial. There needs to be voluntary participation. The second one, anonymity of the data. Thirdly, contact tracing must be part of a broad strategy for pandemic control. That means we need a variety of instruments which are to be effectively coordinated, testing, self-isolation in case of a positive test result. And also traditional contact tracing should also supplement digital contact tracing. So it's not a sort of a competition between the two. We need both. The fourth condition, the measure, digital contact tracing, is to be implemented for a limited period of time only. That means that after the emergency is over, digital contact tracing is to be terminated without delay, and the data collected deleted. And finally, we need definitely a transparent, timely, comprehensive, and also regular public communication about the goals, about the functioning of such an app, the benefits, and the consequences. We need something like democratic oversight. We need an open protocol.
In sports news now, Roger Federer has started a tempest in the tennis world this week with a series of tweets calling on the men's and women's tours to be grouped into one organisation. The 20-time Grand Slam champion's comments have drawn support from tennis greats, including Rafael Nadal and Billie Jean King. Our sports reporter, Matt Layton, spoke to former tennis pro and Swiss gold medalist Mark Rossett and asked whether this could work.
Mark, there's a lot of initiatives going around in all sorts of tennis coaches and players. What do you think of Roger Federer's initiative of bringing everything together?
I think it's a good initiative. You know, lately was, you know, with the Davis Cup, with the ATP Cup, with the Grand Slam, Roland Garros moving, you know, as soon as the COVID-19 came, you know, Roland Garros decided to move the date, you know, for end of September without talking to the players, without talking to the ATP or to the other Grand Slam. So I think it's a little bit of a complicated situation, and I think it would be nice to have like you know, maybe one authority who decide the things, who work a little bit more closely with the players, with the tournaments, and it would make the thing, I think, more easy, not only for the players but also for the spectators, because lately in December we had the Davis Cup in Madrid, and like a month and a half after, maybe 6 weeks after, you have the same competition with the ATP Cup in Australia, and the people get a little bit, okay, but what is the difference? So it's became a little bit too complicated, I think.
Now, we've had just over a day or so to absorb the Roger news, and I was looking at the press half an hour later. It was everyone's top sports story. Digesting the information, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
No, I think it's nice. You know, it's nice to see that Federer, Novak, and Rafa, they're like united. I think I like also the idea of Novak, you know, trying to collect some money, you know, from the top players to help the the low-ranking players, you know, to get through this tough situation. The only doubt I have, you know, it's always the same. You know, when you're facing a crisis, when you're facing a tough time, it's always easy to find the unity. But let's see if once the tournament starts, once the competition starts, if the unity will be that strong still.
You're a competition organizer, you're a tournament director. Are we going to lose some tournaments, do you think, from the circuit, or will everyone be able to bounce back?
I mean, for the you know, for the lowest tournaments, you need sponsors, and for sure with the situation now, I mean, it's going to be very, very complicated to find money to the sponsors. It will be, yeah, it will be complicated. I mean, not for the Grand Slams, not for the Master 1000, not for some tournaments, but let's say for like local tournaments, it will be, the situation will be more complicated than before. That's for sure.
That's you up to date this Friday. Just remember, everything is, as always, available on our website, cnnmoney.ch. But tonight we leave you with these pictures. It's of the moon, which has been, for the very first time, comprehensively mapped by scientists. The 360-degree map is based on 6 geological maps as well as satellite imagery. NASA says it will be used as a reference for lunar science and for future missions to the moon. So next time our astronauts make it there, they won't have to worry about taking a wrong turn. That's you up to date. Bye-bye.